In this video, I'll introduce you to VMware Cloud on AWS storage. So with VMware Cloud on AWS, the underlying storage mechanism that we're using is virtual SAN or vSAN. And vSAN is going to leverage local flash storage on your ESXi hosts. So for example, if you have a cluster of 4 ESXi hosts in your VMware Cloud software-defined data center, all of the local SSD storage on all of those hosts will be leveraged to create one large data store. And it's all flash storage that is extremely fast and provides very high performance. All of that storage is going to be combined to create one shared data store across your cluster using vSAN. Now you cannot modify many of the vSAN cluster settings. The only real exception to that rule is you can modify some of the storage policies to govern the number of failures to tolerate. But other than that, you can't really modify the vSAN cluster settings. You can't configure the vSAN VM kernel port. All of that stuff is basically pre-built for you. By default, the failures to tolerate policy is set to 1, which essentially means if you have a cluster of 4 hosts, if one of those hosts fails, there will not be any data loss. All of your virtual SAN objects will still be intact. Again, you can modify these policies, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We'll go through the different failures to tolerate policies or RAID levels and show you what the differences are between them. So stay tuned for that. But by default, it gives you equivalent protection to RAID 1. So if you're used to kind of dealing with RAID, that's essentially what you're getting. Each 4-host cluster provides a grand total of 21 terabytes of usable storage by default. But again, that will depend on the RAID level that you select. So it really depends on the RAID level you choose, how much usable space you actually get. VMware Cloud with AWS comes with 2 data stores. When you create a software-defined data center, you'll have a workload data store, and you'll have another data store called the vSAN data store. The workload data store is there to provide storage for all of your virtual machines, like the VMs that you create, your templates, your ISO images, really anything that you upload to your software-defined data center or any virtual machines that you create, those all go in the workload data store. And you have full permissions to browse that data store, to create folders and upload files, and basically perform any operations that you could on a data store in your on-premise environment. And again, it's configured to tolerate 1 failure by default, so we can withstand 1 host failure without the loss of data. But you can also define storage policies yourself and assign them to individual objects within that data store. The other data store is called the vSAN data store, and this is for the management VMs inside of your software-defined data center, including things like vCenter, NSX controller nodes, NSX manager, and so on. And this is a data store that is managed by VMware. So you are not able to edit the vSAN cluster settings. You're also not able to monitor the vSAN cluster. You cannot browse this vSAN data store or modify any files within it. So this is a vSAN data store that VMware actually manages because they're spinning up your vCenter instance. Right? They're creating the NSX controller nodes. They don't want to give customers access to that stuff for fear that customers could potentially break something that's already working. Right? So just be aware, we've got those 2 data stores. Right? We've got our workload data store. That's for all of your virtual machines and all of your files. And the vSAN data store is for everything related to management.